Right now, without you doing anything at all, your body is quietly rewriting itself. Not in some dramatic, obvious way, in small, strange ways that most people never get a proper explanation for. I'm Dr. Michael, and today I want to walk you through some of the changes that catch people over 50 completely off guard. Not the changes everyone expects, like gray hair. The ones nobody warns you about ahead of time. The ones that leave people standing in front of a mirror or a doctor's scale, genuinely confused about what's happening to their own body. Stick with me, because some of what I'm about to explain will probably surprise you, even if you've been paying close attention to your health for years. And by the end, you'll understand not just what's happening, but why, and what you can actually influence. Let's start with something that sounds almost impossible when people first hear it. You can lose height, real, measurable height. Not an illusion, not bad posture, actual inches disappearing over the years. I've had patients insist their doctor's scale must be broken when they measure shorter than they remember being. It feels wrong. It feels like something that shouldn't be possible. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. Your spine is made up of 24 individual bones, stacked carefully on top of each other, with soft discs cushioning the space between each one. Those discs give your spine flexibility and absorb pressure every time you move, sit, or stand. As you age, those discs begin to lose strength. They thin out, slowly, year after year. And as each disc thins even slightly, the space between your vertebrae shrinks along with it. One disc thinning barely matters, but your entire spine has dozens of these discs, and over decades, that gradual thinning adds up into something you can actually measure with a tape measure against a door frame. There's a second process happening at the same time, one that most people have never even heard of. Your bones are constantly rebuilding themselves, breaking down old bone tissue, building new bone tissue, in an ongoing cycle your entire life. But after around age 25, that rebuilding process becomes less organized. Your body starts breaking down bones slightly faster than it replaces it. Now, before this starts to feel alarming, I want to give you something genuinely useful. This process isn't something you're powerless against. Weight-bearing activities, walking, jogging, aerobics, resistance training, these can substantially reduce how much bone breakdown actually occurs. Not eliminate it completely, but meaningfully influence it. Which means even this strange, somewhat unsettling change is something you have real leverage over. Now, let's shift to something that affects millions of women, and yet somehow still catches so many of them by surprise when it actually happens. Weight settling in completely new places. Here's something I hear constantly in my practice. Women telling me their diet hasn't changed, their exercise routine hasn't changed, and yet somehow their body seems to be changing anyway. Almost like it's operating by a different set of rules than it used to follow. Let's actually explain what's going on, because there's real science behind this frustration. For many women, this shift begins a few years before menopause itself, during a stage called perimenopause. During a woman's 50s, weight gain during this transition often continues at roughly 1.5 pounds a year. On its own, that number doesn't sound dramatic. But stacked across several consecutive years, it becomes exactly the kind of noticeable shift so many women describe as feeling like their body suddenly turned against them. Here's the specific detail that surprises most people. It's not simply that hormones directly cause the weight gain itself. It's more precise than that. Hormonal changes during menopause shift where fat tends to accumulate. Instead of settling around the hips and thighs, the way it may have for decades earlier in life, it tends to shift toward the abdomen instead. Picture that for a moment. The same body, carrying weight in a completely different distribution than it followed for 30 or 40 years. That single detail explains so much of the confusion and frustration women describe feeling even when their habits haven't meaningfully changed at all. And here's something genuinely encouraging, something that turns this from a purely frustrating fact into something actionable. This process can be minimized, even if it can't be fully prevented. Paying close attention to healthy eating habits and staying consistently active can genuinely help manage this shift over time. One more detail worth knowing, simply because it removes some of the mystery around timing. In the United States, the average age of menopause is 51. It's officially diagnosed after a full 12 months without a period, which means for many women, there's actually a reasonably predictable general window for when these changes tend to begin. even though every individual's exact timeline varies based on genetics and health history. Now, I want you to notice something important about both of these changes we've covered so far. On the surface, height loss and weight redistribution feel like things simply happening to you, randomly, without explanation. But once you understand the actual mechanism behind each one, spinal disc thinning and disordered bone, remodeling for height, hormonal fat redistribution for weight, something shifts in how you relate to them. They stop feeling like mysterious forces working against you. They become specific, understandable biological processes. And understandable processes can usually be influenced, even when they can't be completely stopped. This is exactly why I wanted to walk you through the mechanisms today, instead of simply listing surprising facts without context. Understanding why something happens changes how it feels to experience it. Now, I do want to be honest with you about something because I think you deserve straightforward information rather than an oversimplified story. Not every change your body goes through after 50 follows one single tidy explanation the way these two do. Some involve multiple systems interacting together. Some vary enormously between individuals, shaped by genetics, existing health conditions, and decades of accumulated lifestyle history. If I told you every body change after 50 had one neat cause and one neat fix, that wouldn't be honest with you. Real physiology is more complicated than that. What I can tell you with real confidence is this. The two changes we've explored today, height loss connected to spinal and bone changes, and weight redistribution connected to hormonal shifts, are well documented, well understood, and consistently described across major medical institutions. This isn't speculative information. This reflects established foundational knowledge about how the human body ages. I also want to address something important because I don't want you walking away with the wrong impression. Not all height loss should simply be waved off as normal aging. If height loss happens rapidly, or comes along with back pain, or seems more significant than a slow, gradual decline over many years, that deserves a real conversation with your doctor. It could signal something like osteoporosis or a spinal issue that genuinely needs proper evaluation, not something to quietly assume is simply part of getting older. The same honesty applies to weight changes. If weight gain feels sudden, dramatic, or unusual in a way that doesn't match the slow, gradual pattern we've discussed, that's also worth raising with your doctor, rather than automatically attributing it to menopause and moving on without a second thought. Normal aging and important medical evaluation aren't opposing ideas, they work together. Understanding what's typically expected simply gives you a baseline, a sense of what normal actually looks like, so you can more easily notice when something genuinely feels different from that pattern. Let's bring this together into something you can actually use, starting today. If you've noticed you're a bit shorter than you used to be, understand that this is often tied to spinal disc thinning and bone remodeling, both normal parts of aging. And understand that weight-bearing exercise, walking, resistance training, anything that puts healthy stress on your bones, can meaningfully influence how much bone breakdown occurs over the years ahead. If you're a woman noticing weight settling in new places, especially around your midsection, understand that this often reflects a hormonal shift in where fat accumulates, not simply a personal failure of discipline or willpower. And understand that healthy eating patterns and consistent physical activity can genuinely help manage that shift, even if they can't completely prevent it. And above everything else, understand that knowing roughly when these changes tend to begin and understanding the actual biology behind them removes a certain kind of quiet, background anxiety so many people carry. The anxiety of feeling like your own body is behaving unpredictably for no clear reason at all. It isn't unpredictable. It isn't random. It's biology, doing what biology has always done, simply becoming more visible and more noticeable as the years accumulate around you. Here's something worth sitting with as we close. So many people quietly assume that once they cross 50, their body simply starts working against them in strange, unexplained ways they'll never fully understand. But almost every surprising change we've discussed today has a real, specific, understandable cause behind it. And understanding that cause changes everything about how it feels to actually experience it. It's the difference between feeling like something strange and uncontrollable is happening to you and understanding that you're simply watching a well-documented biological process unfold, one you actually have more influence over than you may have assumed walking into this video. I'm not going to end this by asking you to subscribe or click anything. I just want to leave you with one question. Now that you understand the real reasons behind some of the more surprising changes your body goes through after 50, what would shift about how you feel toward your own body if you stopped seeing these changes as mysterious and frustrating and started seeing them simply as part of a process you finally understand?